These are, in my opinion, the two very best mini retro handheld emulation devices on the market today. To save you some time, in short, the one is more powerful with a better screen and better ergonomics, while the other is a better quality device with excellent face buttons and D-pad, but worse in almost every other way. The scores in this video are out of 10. Perceived quality. I've added this section to give you an idea of how the device appears as opposed to its real world quality. And immediately the RG280V looks and feels premium. The plastic is finished off really well. It feels solid in the hands, and there's no sort of burrs or anything on the plastic. The only rattle comes from these shoulder buttons, which is very slight. The MIYOO Mini, however, does feel rickety and plasticky. It squeaks when you squeeze it. Although at first glance it does look premium and it is really nicely made, it's not the best quality once you hold something like the RG280V in your hands. So the score here is MIYOO Mini 6, the RG280V a solid 9. Size. So in this size section, we are focused on pocketability, how small it is, how handy it is to pop it in your pockets. The MIYOO Mini definitely has the edge. It's thinner and narrower. It's definitely the device that feels the most comfortable placing it in your pocket. You know, as I walk out the house or whatever, I'm gonna be more comfortable popping the MIYOO Mini in my pockets. So MIYOO Mini 10, RG280V and 8. Buttons. I really like the buttons on the MIYOO Mini. You know, the travel is great on these face buttons. The D-pad feels good. It's got a lovely retro feel to it. But I have to hand it to the RG280V and Anbernic. These face buttons have great travel. They feel very nice. They're not too clicky, not too soft. The select and start buttons have a nice feel to them. The shoulder buttons on here aren't the best in the world, but Anbernic stick with them because they work. And you know, the competitors try these sort of things, but these shoulder buttons aren't great. You know, I use them, but this definitely wins at the end of the day. So overall, I have to give the buttons conversation to the RG280V. So a 9 and an 8. It's not a huge edge, but it's definitely better. Ergonomics. So with both of these, there's compromises that have been made so that they can be small. With the RG280V, as you can see, they've made a very small chin. So your buttons, with this, there's a little bit of a chin, so it feels, if you just grip the device like this, you can play almost normally. Whereas with this, you have to invent a new way of holding your device. So I do it like this. I cradle here, these two fingers go top and bottom, and then I play with my thumbs. So definitely not the greatest, but once you get used to that, it's not that bad, but it's definitely not a device for long playtime, whereas this does feel more comfortable. So ergonomics, I have to give to the MIYOO Mini. Ergonomics are a 6, ergonomics on here are a 4. However, moving on, the RG280V does have a saving grace feature on it for, you know, ergonomically speaking, and we'll get to that a little bit later in the video. Display. So strangely enough, the old videos of the RG280V, the old videos on YouTube, they praise the screen on this device, saying it's got great saturation and all that. But now, as things have progressed and devices gotten better, I find this to be oversaturated. If you compare these now, obviously on YouTube, it's not going to read out very well. This is a slightly cooler screen. It's a slightly warmer screen, but this isn't really cooler as much as it is even in the spread of color and tone and saturation. The more you use it, the more you start to notice that this is a more natural looking screen. Also, this one stretches all the way to the edge, which really adds to the sort of attractiveness of this device, whereas this has got massive bezels compared to this. But those are not really things that you really notice over time. But really the thing that you notice is the resolution. The RG280V has a 2.8 inch IPS screen at 320 by 460, whereas this is 640. It's a 2.8 inch IPS, but it's at 640 by 480, which means it is double the resolution, or not double, but it's a lot more pixels per inch on the screen. So you're getting a far better density of pixels, but it's also a far better quality of image that gets rendered. That being said, I do find that Game Boy Advance, so Game Boy Advance is designed for a small, crappy screen, and it actually looks quite nice on the screen because it looks more authentic. So another note is, when looking at this now, the brightness on the screen is not wonderful. I don't think I've actually used this outdoors. I struggled outdoors. It was admittedly a darker game, but I struggled outdoors with this. So if you struggle outdoors with this is going to be even worse. So brightness on these devices aren't great. They're not outdoor playing devices. So overall, I'm going to give the MIYOO Mini a 7. I'm lending myself, now that I'm actually looking at them again, towards an 8 on the screen, just because of the sheer quality of the screen, and this is a 5. Performance. I'm not big on analyzing performance, especially at this point of the game where, I'm focused heavily at the moment on my channel with like retro games, playing Super Mario, playing Sega Mega Drive, those sorts of era games, and at that level performance isn't that important. Also, the size of these devices sort of negates any extra performance that the MIYOO Mini might have. So the MIYOO Mini is a better performing device, but it is kind of limited by the size, because the higher performing games need trigger buttons to be something that you can use very effectively. This device just doesn't give you that. And so I don't think we should focus too much on performance here, but this does win the game at the end of the day. So that being said, I want to quickly load the game that I've been playing mostly on this device, which is a PS1 game called Colin Mcrae Rally. It's one of my favorite PS1 games of late. It's something that I never really played back in the day, but I've discovered on these retro devices. And this game doesn't use trigger buttons, so that helps it. And the graphics look great. And in this case, because the graphics aren't phenomenal on this game, the softer screen just smooths out the pixels a little bit, and gives it that sort of analog look. Because these games were designed for crappy TVs. I have not had a performance issue yet. When I crash and all that, when it uses a lot of CPU, let's just crash into the trees here, use a lot of CPU to do a crash, it doesn't glitch, doesn't do anything, just keeps going. And I'm thoroughly enjoying this game. And I said it gives you finger fatigue. I play this game for a long period of time. So my wife falls asleep and then I grab this, and I played for about 45 minutes to an hour without too much. Okay, there's a good crash. No hassle. So, it depends on the game. This is not a high demand game, but just to give you an idea that the RG280V is a lovely little device. It might be old, but you're going to get a lot of enjoyment out of it. Okay, so the next thing I want to talk about is emulators. So these two devices both run on a RetroArch core. This is OpenDingix with a simple menu front end using RetroArch emulators. This is the OnionOS system. I think it's based on Linux, and then also using RetroArch kernels. Also, it's got the RetroArch system running in the background. And then on top of that, they've got a few extra emulators for games that don't work with the RetroArch cores. All that to say, the way that they manage the cores are different. So let me just give you an example. Let's go to NES. So you can go in here and you can select which core, Quick NES, the FCEU NES emulator. So there's two emulators you can choose here. So if you find that specific game is not working with this emulator, you can switch to that emulator, and that gives you the opportunity to customize your game library on the device as you go, and it'll save that forever for that specific game. So each game has its own emulator choice option. That is brilliant. That is a very good thing that Atom Image have instituted. Whereas OnionOS, as wonderful as it is, and I'm going to sing its praises a little bit later in this, in these game categories, what they are actually categorized are by emulator core. So when I go into Sega 32X, there's a specific core, a specific emulator core running in the background for all the games in that folder. If they don't work, you need to enable expert mode and you can install as all the different cores that they've made available. So there's MGBA. So those were RetroArch cores. All of these are RetroArch cores. These are not all RetroArch cores. So this MGBA is an old GBA core that works really well for a lot of GBA games. So you have to navigate, so sorry, that's a long story to explain that you have to navigate to a different place in the menu to enable and use different cores if that game doesn't work. So it's a long way and long workaround where this platform does it in a very easy and very quick way. That being said, the other big plus with the Atom image is that these cores are specialized for the RG350 era devices. I don't think these are, I think they are trying to specialize them. So for example, I'm enjoying a Neo Geo game called Metal Slug. Someone recommended it to me when I went on a holiday, and I couldn't actually get them working on here. So if I go to my Neo Geo section, all of these games, downloaded album art and everything, none of them, not a single one works. Yeah, actually, I've managed to get one working. I went onto the wiki and I figured out that you have to add the BIOS file to the ROM folder as well as the BIOS folder. So I got one of these games working on here. Whereas on here, with my ability to switch cores, I've managed to get, I think there's only one that isn't working. So out of the 6 Metal Slugs or 7 Metal Slugs that I have here, there's only one that's not working. And that's purely because of the level of flexibility I have there. I actually haven't found a emulator core on here in the expert mode that can play those Neo Geo games. So definitely the RG280V, due to Atom Image handling emulator cores so well, gets the win for the emulator argument. So MIYOO Mini and 8, RG280V and 9 for emulators. Okay, so audio. This is not particularly interesting. I was going to say it's very interesting, but it isn't. So this one has a speaker here at the back. This one has a speaker here at the front. This speaker is a better speaker. It's a larger speaker with a nice fuller sound. However, it's firing out the back, which just kind of negates the fact that it's a nice speaker, because anywhere in public you can't sneak a little bit of audio because it's just blasting. It's going to be louder for the person in front of you than it is for you. Whereas this has got a tiny, crappy little speaker in the corner here, perfect for 16-bit games and all that sort of thing. It's an okay speaker, and it's firing from the front. So sometimes you'll cover it by accident, but for the most part, it's working really well. So I prefer this speaker because of its placement. So the MIYOO Mini gets a 6 and the RG280V gets a 4 for audio. Battery life. I must be honest here, I don't have a sort of a useful test to do yet. I need to figure out a way that I can test the battery life on these and give you a worthwhile real-world battery life test. The best I can say is that I feel when I use these, so I've been using this device non-stop since it arrived, and I've been using this device non-stop until this one arrived. So for a few months I used this one. The battery feels like it lasts longer with this, and I'll tell you why I think that is. Because this has I think a 2050 milliamp hour battery, and this I think is a 2000 milliamp hour battery. But the reason why this one lasts longer is because it has a true sleep mode. So when you do this, it actually powers some of the stuff happening inside down. Whereas with this one, if you press start and Y, all it's actually doing is turning the screen off. It's not a true sleep mode. So the win goes to this for battery life purely because of its sleep mode. Because of the operating system, the MIYOO Mini gets an 8 for battery life, and the RG280V gets a 6 for battery life, thanks to that true sleep mode that this has. Okay, so operating system, the firmware, is it intuitive? Both, yes. So the one critique I always give in these videos of Atom Image is the way that it has broken up consoles and handhelds. So here I just have games, everything's there. It just feels easier to use. I don't feel the need to split handhelds and consoles. So here I need to go a console, handheld, Once I'm in there, then I need to choose, which handheld, then I'm in there. Then I have to go back, and you can sometimes get confused where you are in the system. Let's go back up to console. Now there are my consoles. Go in there, then I choose my game. Whereas there's the home page, games, which console, in we go, there's the game, it's very quick. So that I really like. The other thing about this is the home page, favorites, boom, you're in, there's my favorites. Whereas here, you have to, so here, if I press Y, I don't go to my favorites. I have to go into one of these categories. So let's say consoles, press Y, I'm in favorites, then I still need to go into favorites. I've been setting this up, so I've only got one favorite here. Now to get out, I need to press Y again to get out of favorites. Now I'm back. There are some, with this lovely Betamax theme, there are some on-screen help little things, but overall, I just find that this is a far more intuitive system. So definitely a win on this side. A few things to mention here is that it has a true sleep function, as I mentioned. This doesn't have that. A fast startup time, that starts up very quickly. It also opens games where you left off. So when you power on, you're immediately in a game, which is quite a big plus. And it has quite a few other, great features that when you move to other devices, you will start to miss them because it is just so intuitive and nice to use. Now, I've kind of found a hack on this is that this does sort of have a open it up where you left off system. Let's go to SNES. And let's say, for instance, I want Super Mario World. I want this to be in sort of a cartridge mode. I want it to open in Super Mario every time I open the device. So I say select. It brings up that menu where you choose the call. Now I say auto start yes. So now what will happen is every time I open the device, it's going to open in here. So when I want to close this, so the shortcut to close down a game is power select. Shutting down in 2 seconds, or X to cancel. If you press X, it'll go away from that cartridge mode, but now it's shutting down the device. Now when I switch it on, it's not going to open where I left off, but it is going to open in the game that I've set it to sort of cartridge mode, auto start mode. See, they're now starting the game, and there I am in Super Mario World. So that's quite a cool feature. And then I want to get out of it. It's going to say, now if I go here, auto start is no longer enabled. So that's pretty cool. So that's a little hack on the Atom image that'll get you that sort of cartridge mode that this has. So I'm going to give 9 to the MIYOO Mini for operating system. I'm going to give a 7 to the RG280V for the lovely Atom image that it has. Okay, so these devices both have lovely themes thanks to their operating systems. So let's have a look here. The MIYOO Mini. So this is I just like the standard OnionOS theme. There's a sort of grayish one. There's a Windows theme. So if you want to get the Windows theme, so now it looks like I'm in Windows. This is quite nice because this is a very nice Game Boy, device, and now it's sort of a Game Boy style. So that I quite like. And the Atom image doesn't have as many themes, but it does have a few cool themes. So let's just go into the menu here. So Betamax is this one that I'm currently using, which I really enjoy. Once they did that, I was set. I was like, I love this Betamax. I'm going to use it forever. So this is, you've probably seen this one on lots of reviews. Got this, these nice overlays. So this is a really nice one to use. Also got on-screen prompts. So that's really cool. I actually quite like that one. And then it's got Comic Book, which is actually by Russ from Retro Game Core. He did this back in the day. Lovely one. So I can't remember where he got these from. So let's just go into there. It's one, Game Boy Advance. That's pretty cool. If you wanted a more playful look to it. SimUI I can't remember. This is just a really simple look. OA is one of the old ones. It's got that screen. Go in there. It's got that. So also a more simple look and feel. Actually, now that I'm looking at it, I actually give the edge. I would give this an 8 for themes, and this is 7. The themes in here are really nice. And then, as I mentioned, this is just something that I think is worth a mention on these devices, is that both of these have a favorites folder. This also has a recents folder, which you can disable. But I just feel that all devices need a favorites folder, especially these retro game consoles that some people have like 1,000 games. Now to manage that, you go through phases of liking this game or that game. You can manage your favorites to bring it down to maybe 10 games that you're using at a time. So each device, okay, that only has one favorite, but each device has a favorite section, and I really like that. Not going to give that a score, but I wanted to mention that. Okay, moving on to real world quality. So I talked about perceived quality and how these both seem really nice. I think I kind of gave it away in that section. But anyway, the real world quality, you see, the thing is, when I first got this, I hadn't used it for a long time. I did mention in my first video that I was concerned about this battery door, and as I'm using it, it's getting less and less able to hold in there. So that eventually that's just going to start falling out. It's a really horrible battery door. This plug for the battery has actually cracked due to, I think it was very stiff in the beginning, and when I pulled it out, it cracked or something. I'm not sure how that happened. So the battery plug is now cracked, and just overall, it's squeaky, and it's not as, it just is flat out not as well made as the Anbernic 280V. You can see that by when I first started this video, I showed the edges. They are just finished off really, really well. Anbernic take care to just finish off their devices. This device might not be ergonomically sound, but it is very, very well made. The screen is, you can actually see the way the screen is beautifully set into the device. And the buttons, like I mentioned, are just solid. It really is an excellently made device. Is that a word? Excellently. So for real world quality, I give this a 10 and I give this a 6. And then retro feels. These both get a 10. I mean, this is the Famicom colors. I had a Famicom gaming console when I was a kid. It just brings back those memories. I love the look and feel of this. This is just, for me, this is the ultimate. Like for design and the reason I started to enjoy this hobby, the Famicom look on this is just lovely. And then this is the also beautiful retro feels, fulfilling a childhood dream of owning a Game Boy, which I never got to own. This looks a little bit like a Game Boy. It feels a little bit like a Game Boy. And I really love the retro feels in this. So the two of them, they both get a 10 for retro feels. Pricing and availability. This is where things start to get a little bit interesting because the MIYOO Mini is not available right now. I bought this for $53. It is now, I think, listed, I saw it somewhere for $100, which is just ridiculous. I think someone bought a few and is trying to sell them for a ridiculous price. I reckon they'll be relisted at about $60, $69, somewhere around there. I bought this on Anbernic on sale for about $55, which was a great deal. This sits at about $59. I think this is going to relist for about the same price. When I first made this review video, this was selling for $73 and I bought this for $53. So there was a massive jump in price. Now they're about equal, and so with all things equal and the fact that this is never available, this wins pricing and availability hands down. So this gets a 4, this gets a 9. So standout features for both of these devices. This does have the cartridge mode, like I mentioned, something that if you get used to, just a little fiddle, you can do that. So if you're into a specific game, like for instance, I'm into that PlayStation game, I'm into Colin Mcrae at the moment, so I can set this to just open up in that game every time I switch it on. So that's a nice thing. Quality buttons. The quality, I have to just mention it again. These buttons, when I opened it, it just stood out to me. What lovely buttons these are to use. They're better quality buttons than my Famicom that I had back in the day. They're better than this. They're even, this is the RG280V, and yeah, I think these are better. So I don't know what happened there. Maybe there's a nicer membrane in here, but I just prefer the buttons on this. Standout feature, definitely. And then also, one of the nice things that they've done, it doesn't have all the shortcuts and all that, but there's a help menu for all those little shortcuts that I've been using throughout this video. Most of them are there. So that's a nice little feature. This definitely has more standout features. It's got the quick launcher. Let's open a game. Okay, now let's just power it down. Power it back up. There we go, right where we were. So that's really cool. And you press here. So the game switcher and that auto load is a very cool part of the system. As I mentioned, this has got a true sleep mode, which is a really big bonus on this device. And then overall, just OnionOS, that is a standout feature. You know, the custom firmware, the firmware that it comes with is okay, but this OnionOS just takes it to a whole nother level. And it's quite possibly the best custom firmware for any device across the board. And then look, let's talk about alternative buys. These two they kind of stand on their own in terms of pricing and their form factor. There's not a lot of competitors out there. The latest small vertical devices are far more expensive. So there's the Powkiddy V90, which is the flip out one. I'll put the picture on the screen now. It's very dated, but it's solid, it's cheap, and it has some serious retro feels because it's like a mini, well, a fake Game Boy SP. I'd go for the black one though. I had the yellow one and I sold it recently. And if I do get it again, I'd want to get the black one. Another option is to go for a horizontal device. Because there just are so many, and a lot of the older versions are going cheaply now. So you can get the RG280V, which I think has a similar screen to this, a bigger screen, but a similar sort of quality screen. The RG350P also has HDMI out, which is quite a big bonus. For a little bit more money, you can get the RG351P, which is far more powerful, but the screen is not this ratio, whatever this is, 4:3 or whatever. It's more a 3. I'll put it on the screen. I don't know those specs, but it's more geared towards Game Boy Advance games, and it's powerful enough to play, you know, PS1 and maybe some N64, but the screen's not really geared up for that. Anyway, so those are the alternative buys. Everything else is a little bit more expensive than this, so these kind of really do stand on their own. And so who should buy these? I'm kind of shifting my opinion as I make this video, you know, digging deeper into these. But I made this video purely because I wanted this device, and I also wanted to see how it matched up to this. And I thought it was a worthy opponent, now that the price has come down, a worthy alternative when this is not available. So if you're in a rush to go to market and buy something, get the RG280V. You're not going to be sorry. Just be aware that it is a bit chunkier and that it isn't as powerful, and it doesn't have as nice a screen. But, and a big but, this is better built. It just is. And if you are someone who's concerned about that, if you're concerned about the longevity, if this is the only device you are going to buy, I would get the RG280V just because it is going to last longer. It just is. It's better built. It's a better quality device. It's underpowered, but it's a better quality device. So purely on that, I would get this if that is important to you. You know, if they are both available, if you're sitting and they're both available, and you can't decide, retro feels are the same. They both have that lovely feel to them. I think if quality of screen and sort of that overall experience with OnionOS is important to you, get this. If quality of a device is everything to you, then the RG280V is a definite winner for you.